And then what did you make of Sophie Cunningham's flagrant foul on JC towards the end?
It was a flagrant foul.
Do you think it's like defending Caitlin or defending the team, or how do you view just how it all?
I view it as a flagrant foul.
I'll ask about the game too.
Yeah, well, I mean, you guys came for basketball.
Yeah,
Let's
no,
talk
seriously.
about basketball.
Yeah.
Come on now.
What do you think of just how you all were able to pull in the second half, Caitlin, in particular?
We're going to the Commissioner Cup Championship.
Let's
That's
go!
pretty exciting. Y'all want to talk about that? Let's talk about that.
Let's be brutally honest, the WNBA doesn't deserve Caitlin Clark. They've been handed the most transcendent talent women's basketball has ever seen. A once-in-a-generation player who didn't just show up to play, she changed the game. Caitlin Clark didn't wait for the league to catch up to her. She dragged it out of the shadows and into the mainstream, almost single-handedly elevating the WNBA. From niche followings to national headlines, she put eyes on the product, filled arenas, broke viewership records, and gave the league a momentum it had been chasing for decades. And how does the league repay her? By standing by as their referees repeatedly turn a blind eye to the relentless physical punishment she takes on the court, game after game, season after season. Clark has been treated less like a superstar and more like a target, cheap shots, hard fouls, blatant contact that gets overlooked while the officials swallow their whistles, as if protecting the league's brightest star is somehow optional. It's not about asking for special treatment, it's about demanding basic protection. Any other league would be doing everything in its power to safeguard its marquee player, to ensure the face of its future isn't being bullied into irrelevance, but instead, Clark is left to fend for herself, absorbing hit after hit while the people in charge pretend it's all part of the game. The truth, Caitlin Clark raised the stakes. She raised the visibility, she raised the value of the WNBA, but the league, so far, they've failed to raise their standards in return.
All right, enough is enough. You know, at some point, the line gets crossed too often where something needs to be done and things need to be corrected. And that is certainly the case with the way things around Caitlin Clark are officiated. This is a constant problem now. You know, it is something that since the beginning, I've kind of like backed off on because physical play is a part of sports. You know, going after a superstar and trying to rough them up a little bit to get in their head is a part of sports. But when it crosses the line, the referees need to do their jobs. They need to do their jobs, blow the whistle, and officiate properly.
And when Caitlin Clark finally had enough, when she finally stepped up to that podium, after yet another game where the officials seemed more interested in letting chaos play out than actually enforcing the rules, it wasn't just another soundbite. It was a breaking point. It came on the heels of Sophie Cunningham getting ejected. Not for reckless play, not for unsportsmanlike behavior, but for doing what the referees had stubbornly refused to do all season, actually protect the league's biggest star. By the time Clark faced the press, the frustration wasn't just simmering, it was boiling over. She had been shoved, hacked, knocked to the floor more times than most rookies endure in an entire season, and still, the whistles remained silent. She had played through the bruises, through the cheap shots, through the targeted aggression with the kind of composure that most veterans would struggle to maintain. She had taken it all quietly, professionally, and without throwing her teammates or the league under the bus. But this time was different. Her response wasn't petty, it wasn't emotional, it wasn't even calculated, it was necessary. And it was long overdue. She didn't raise her voice, but her words cut deeper than any viral highlight. It wasn't just about that game. It was about the pattern, the way the league's officials had consistently failed to do the bare minimum to protect her. It was about the double standard of letting stars from other teams get the benefit of the doubt, while Clark was treated like she hadn't earned it. Her frustration carried the weight of an entire season's worth of physical punishment and media spin, and when she spoke, you could hear it, the exhaustion, the restraint, and the deep disappointment that the league she helped elevate seemed completely unwilling to protect its most valuable asset. It wasn't a meltdown. It wasn't a tantrum. It was a quiet, pointed reckoning, and the most telling part, she shouldn't have had to say a word. She shouldn't have had to ask for protection. The league should have recognized her value long before she felt the need to call them out. Her response wasn't just deserved, it was the moment. The WNBA was forced to confront its own negligence, and now, the question isn't whether Caitlin Clark can endure this, it's whether the league can afford to keep letting it happen.
I don't understand why this is all happening to Caitlin Clark, who's brought so much attention to the league, frankly, revenue and viewership numbers. She single-handedly has made the broadcast rights go up, and I'm not saying she's the only one who did it. Yes, all of the women that came before her matter too, But the WNBA is doing better because Caitlin Clark is in it now. It is one of the reasons they're doing better, and a rising tide lifts all boats. Everybody in the WNBA is better off.
Here's what really went down that night against the Connecticut Sun. The night that didn't just expose one bad play, but pulled back the curtain on everything that's wrong with how the WNBA has mishandled Caitlin Clark from day one. It started in the third quarter when JC Sheldon blatantly poked Clark in the eye. This wasn't some accidental hand swipe or incidental contact you could shrug off. It was a targeted, physical jab that should have been a hard stop. A clear signal to the referees that the game was slipping into dangerous territory. This was the moment the officials should have taken control, set the tone, and sent a message that this wasn't going to become another hit parade at Clark's expense. But they didn't. Instead, they let the game spiral, let the temperature rise, let the tension build with no intervention, no accountability, and no real protection for the player, who's become the face of the league. And as the refs swallowed their whistles, Marina Mabrey saw an opening and she took it. She blindsided Clark, knocking her to the ground in a move that had zero basketball purpose. It wasn't a hustle play, it wasn't a fight for position, it was a blatant cheap shot, a shove designed to send a message. And that message was clear: the officials aren't going to save you. And what did the refs do? Did they step up and control the game? Did they issue the ejections that were clearly warranted? Did they protect the integrity of the sport? No. They handed out a few meaningless technical fouls, just enough to act like they did something and moved on like nothing happened. No real consequence, no real accountability, just a token slap on the wrist and back to play. It wasn't just a missed call. It wasn't just a bad night for the officiating crew. It was a symptom of a deeper problem, a league that has been given a generational star, a player who's literally dragging the WNBA into mainstream relevance, and yet continues to allow her to be treated like she's disposable. Caitlin Clark has taken hit after hit this season, not just physically, but from a system that seems to think her popularity, her skill, and her drawing power don't warrant even the most basic level of protection. The Connecticut game was the clearest, most painful example of it, yet a showcase of negligence disguised as officiating. What happened that night wasn't just about one play. It was about a pattern that says it's open season on Caitlin Clark. And the people responsible for keeping the game safe are content to sit back and let it happen.
Courtney, if somebody ever tackles you like that,
nobody would ever tackle me like that. They would play with Bridget like that, and then we would have to like take it up there.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
But I'm just saying. Like,
I ain't nobody would ever
if,
me like
if that ever happens, you better crash out behind me, because I'm crashing out behind you.
T,
we can share the same jail cell. Yeah, bro.
Oh my gosh, bro. Our team would cry, bro, because they would play with somebody that's like not even like.
But Sophie Cunningham wasn't having it. She stood there and watched her teammate, Caitlin Clark, get targeted over and over. She watched the refs look the other way, ignoring cheap shots, eye pokes, and blatant fouls like it was all just part of the game. And finally, she decided enough is enough. With less than a minute left on the clock, Cunninghamam made her statement. On a fast break, she wrapped up JC Sheldon and took her straight to the ground, not recklessly, but intentionally, deliberately, sending a message that couldn't be missed. If the WNBA wasn't going to protect Caitlin Clark, then her teammates would. No hesitation, no apology. The price? Cunninghamam got ejected. But the message she left on that court echoed a lot louder than the whistle that tossed her out.
But tonight, she is one of the best teammates in the world. After the entire league has been after Caitlin Clark for so long, and after tonight getting poked in the eye and body shoved by the Connecticut Sun, Sophie Cunningham had finally had enough and took it into her own hands.
Sheldon comes up with the steal. Sheldon goes coast to coast. And here we got another big news here as JC Sheldon.
The player who finally stood up for the league's biggest star got kicked out of the game for doing something that should have never been necessary in the first place. Are we serious right now? Let's talk about just how absurd this entire situation really is. Caitlin Clark isn't just another rookie. She isn't just another name on the roster. She's a once-in-a-generation talent who has completely transformed the WNBA. She's brought millions of new fans to women's basketball, skyrocketed television ratings to levels the league has never seen, and made the WNBA more relevant, more profitable, and more culturally visible than it's ever been in its entire 27-year history. Caitlin Clark didn't just show up, she elevated the entire league. She turned packed arenas, primetime games, and viral moments into the new normal. She is, without question, the engine driving the WNBA's current success. And how does the league repay her? By standing by game after game while she's targeted with blatant, dangerous physical play. By allowing referees to let obvious fouls slide to turn away while she gets shoved, grabbed, hit, and hacked like she's some disposable role player. And when finally a teammate like Sophie Cunningham steps up and says, "If the WNBA won't protect her, I will," she's immediately thrown out of the game, punished for doing the very job the officials refused to do. It's not just unfair, it's embarrassing. The league is thriving on Caitlin Clark's star power, selling out arenas because of her, printing money on her name, but somehow can't be bothered to enforce the most basic level of protection for her on the court. Instead, they're letting her be the punching bag of the league, forcing her teammates to pick up the slack and ejecting them when they do. This isn't just bad officiating. This is a failure at every level, of failure to protect their investment, their superstar, and their future, and the WNBA better figure it out fast. Because Caitlin Clark is the reason the world is watching. The real question now is whether the league even deserves to have her.